I'm Richard Cuff of Allentown, Pennsylvania. You're tuned to the International Radio Report. 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, October the 27th, 2024. We thank you for tuning in to our show. We're here every Sunday morning with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. My name's Sheldon. Jill is at the master control, and we have a lot of information to pass along to you, as usual, each week here on the show. Sadly, though, today we're going to begin the show with a number of obituaries. Rather odd for so many to pop up all in the same week, but a lot of people in our hobby and pastime are getting on there in age, and we're going to be having more of this, I guess, in the months and weeks and years ahead. So this week is one of those weeks. We're going to start off first with a notice from over in Europe, and Anker Petersen, the founder of the European DX Council in 1967, has passed away, and very well known in the European DX scene, and was very active with the Danish Shortwave Club International. So a number of nice messages and obituaries were posted up by many of the members of the DXing community around the world to mark Anker's passing. Also, in a famous name in radio in New Zealand, David Rikish passed away at his home in Wellington, New Zealand on September the 23rd. David initiated the Radio Heritage Collection project in 1999, which the foundation took over, and was the founding chairman. David had been involved with radio in New Zealand since the 1970s in a number of roles, including presenting radio documentaries and news programs carried by both Radio Australia and Radio New Zealand International. Then we have two notices of ham operators, both members of a club here in Montreal, the West Island Amateur Radio Club. Larry Dobby, Victor Echo 2 Delta Oscar. Larry was a fixture on the ham radio scene in Montreal. He served as president of the West Island Amateur Radio Club on 8 different occasions over the last 40 years. And anybody that was at Hamfests in and around Montreal and Eastern Ontario probably ran into Larry over the years. He was a fixture at Hamfests and flea markets, particularly in the province of Quebec. And also from the same club, James Keep, Victor Echo 2, Kilo Hotel Charlie. James was very passionate about amateur radio and served in many roles to further and promote the hobby. He was the director of the VE2RM repeater group. With Environment Canada, he was a can-worn spotter. He's the former director for Quebec of Radio Amateurs of Canada, the former treasurer of the VE2RM repeater group, a former treasurer of the West Island Amateur Radio Club from 1998 to 2001. He was a volunteer service coordinator for the Canadian Ski Marathon every year. Over 15 years he took on that role. He was a Radio Amateurs of Canada certified emergency coordinator, and he also was responsible for the West Island Amateur Radio Emergency Services. So very, very active in the community of ham radio here in, particularly in Quebec and the Montreal region. So he will be missed as well. So sad to report all those passings, but we thought we would definitely pay tribute to them here on the show this week.
So in our next story, we have Marie-Philippe Bouchard confirmed as next CBC Radio Canada president. This is by Connie Theissen, Broadcast Dialogue. Canadian Heritage Minister Pascal Saint-Onge has confirmed the appointment of Marie-Philippe Bouchard as CBC Radio Canada's next president and CEO. Appointed for a 5-year term, effective January 3rd, Bouchard's appointment has been widely rumored since last week when Quebec media outlets, including Radio-Canada, reported she was in line for the job. Bouchard has served as president and CEO of francophone public broadcaster TV5 Quebec, Canada since 2016, overseeing the TV5 Uni channels and platforms. In addition to president over TV5 Numérique, TV5 Monde's partner in establishing international French language platform TV5 Monde Plus. Prior to joining TV5, Bouchard held management and executive positions at CBC Radio Canada in legal services, strategic planning, regulatory affairs, and digital services, most recently as Director General of Radio Canada's music services. She is a member of the Quebec Bar, holding a master's degree in public law from the Université de Montréal, and sits on a number of boards, including the Festival International de la Naudière, and serves as chair of the management board of the Université de Montréal Center for Research in Public Law. Fluently bilingual, she'll be the first Francophone woman to serve as president and CEO of CBC Radio Canada. Marie-Philippe Bouchard is a talented, strong public broadcasting leader with a proven record of transformation. As the next president and CEO of CBC Radio Canada, she brings a wealth of experience to this pivotal time for our cultural and information ecosystem, as well as a solid background in organizational culture and change leadership. In a critical time of modernization, I am confident that Mrs. Bouchard will provide a steady hand and be a positive guiding force for Canada's national public service media now and into the future. I want to thank the Independent Advisory Committee, which played a crucial role in this process. I would also like to thank Katherine Tate for her work and passion for CBC Radio Canada as a vibrant, creative, and inclusive force during her tenure as president and CEO. Public service media all around the world serve as a precious public asset, added Bouchard. As society changes at a fast pace, so must our public broadcaster, continuing to build trust in order to remain relevant to all Canadians. With my experience serving audiences both at TV5 Uni TV and CBC Radio Canada, I look forward to this challenge and to working together with all Canadians, including the CBC Radio Canada team, Canadian content creators, and other partners to chart the path forward. Our national public broadcaster brings us and our understanding of one another closer together despite massive distance. CBC Radio Canada is our place for discovering and sharing stories that embody Francophone, Anglophone, and Indigenous cultures on a range of innovative platforms. Our national broadcaster provides us with trustworthy news and information, highlights our creativity, and offers us perspective that enrich our lives right here in the place we call home. Bouchard succeeds Katherine Tate, who had been in the president's role since 2018. Initially appointed to a 5-year term, her tenure was extended by 18 months in spring of 2023. So congratulations. And, sometimes when you change somebody at the head of a public broadcaster, it also gives it, fresh air and new directions that it might go through.
It's going to be a challenge, though, because depending on what happens with our federal government, there's a possible election coming up soon. And certainly one party has been very critical of CBC and would like to cut a lot of their funding. There's going to be a challenge facing her to deal with that and to try and make the service more efficient, especially if they have to move forward with less funding. Seems like she's got a lot of background, has got a lot of experience, and it'll be interesting to follow the developments with the national broadcaster. Next, we move out to Alberta, and we've talked about this story in the past with CKUA Radio, and they were having some financial difficulties. The headline is by Connie Theissen, again from Broadcast Dialogue. CKUA Radio bridging the gap as station falls short of $3 million fundraising goal. CKUA Radio says that while it hasn't been able to meet a $3 million fundraising target, it's found ways to bridge the gap to keep the 96-year-old Alberta institution from going silent. Back in April, the community radio station, which has a presence in both Edmonton and Calgary, made an urgent listener appeal for donations, citing a perfect storm of rising inflationary pressures, limited government funding, the devaluation of its downtown Edmonton office space, and post-pandemic realties. While that initial fundraising effort saw $1.8 million raised in the first 10 days, the station found itself still $500,000 short of its $3 million goal by the end of September. While we did not achieve our target by September 30th, we found avenues to bridge the gap, said CKUA CEO Mark Carnes on Wednesday. We found new efficiencies in some of our capital costs. We negotiated with our lender to defer payments, and we made additional cuts that were risking our ability to continue providing unimpeded service levels across the organization. What's more, we're in continual conversations with several donors that will see us well past the $3 million mark, subject to some conditions. But we continue to push forward with cautious optimism. Carnes said those prospective donor conditions include that the provincial and federal government step up with one-time funding, that negotiations with CKUA's lenders come to a satisfactory conclusion, and that its upcoming on-air fundraising event that launches this Friday is a success. The station says despite its financial challenges, year-over-year listenership continues to grow. However, many of the challenges from April remain, including affordability, the high cost of borrowing, and pressure to pay off the station's loan for the historic Alberta Hotel property, which is moved into 2012 at an estimated cost of $17 million amidst the real estate acquisition and interior renovations. CKUA has managed to increase tenant occupancy at the Jasper Avenue Heritage Building from 50 to 85%, albeit at a lower market rent. Carnes said CKUA's radio spotlighted over 50 music festivals across the province this summer, providing a critical touch point with the community and showcasing dozens of emerging and headlining artists. When CKUA Radio covers these events, the community shows up and collectively spends millions in hard-earned dollars supporting venues, events, artists, and local jobs, said Carnes. Our listeners have invigorated rural and urban communities across our province. One thing is for sure, this was not happening with commercial media or digital streaming services, and that's the power of every single CKUA donor, and this is why it matters that CKUA Radio continues to exist. We've heard this before. Yep. We have similar situations at times here at CKUT in Montreal with a campus community radio station where a funding drive is important every year, and student fees, a portion of student fees coming to the station to help keep it afloat while costs continue to increase. So it's not uncommon for things like this to happen with these types of radio stations. CKUA is really come to the forefront, though, in Alberta. Very highly respected radio, really serving the community, really supporting local artists and events going on. So we hope that they will be able to continue, and it looks like they're trying to find different ways of bridging the gap, as they call it.
So, of course, the story of the automakers spending millions more in third quarter to kill the AM Radio Act. This is via Radio Inc. Congress has just over 2 months to pass the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, and automakers haven't given up their lobbying on Capitol Hill to make sure they can remove access to free entertainment and life-saving information, according to Q3 disclosures. As of this filing deadline on October 21st, 6 automakers spent $5.8 million in the third quarter with ties to squelching the act. The lowest quarterly spend of the year, $7.4 million, was spent in Q1, which is first quarter, while $7 million was spent on lobbying in the second quarter. General Motors again spent the most, accounting for $3.05 million alone, employing the help of Missy Edwards' strategies, fierce government relations, BL Partners Group LLC, and 4 more lobbying firms outside of its in-house team. Toyota was next with a total of $1.661 million, followed by Ford's lobbying spend of $574,000. Honda specifically cut its lobbying budget, dropping from $1.1 million in the second quarter to $400,000. Meanwhile, electric vehicle manufacturers Tesla and Rivian, all among the first to remove AM access from their models, spent $120,000 and $40,000 respectively. Automakers are simply hoping to stall the legislation until the 118th Congress adjourns, despite strong backing with 262 co-sponsors in the House and a supermajority in the Senate. The bill still awaits votes in both chambers. Pretty incredible that you're spending millions of dollars to make sure that radios won't be in your cars.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it would probably cost you a fraction of that money to just put the AM and FM radios in the cars. Like, just do what you were doing before. It shouldn't increase any expense. What this is doing is increasing millions of dollars of expenses to try and stop something, an act from passing. You know, we saw the important role that AM played just in the last few weeks with the 2 hurricanes down in the southeastern United States. People were cut off from everything except AM radios in many cases, and AM radio really stepped up and were featured on things like 60 Minutes and CBS News, talking about how important these services were during these crises. So it's kind of counterproductive to me that they're spending this kind of money to try and stop the act from passing.
So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is getting very active again. There's a huge sunspot group that is appearing on a solar disk, and it seems that it's going to be maybe a little troublemaker, as it already has done a X3 class solar flare, and that means that it's possible that even today there could be some geomagnetic storming due to that flare that happened on October 24th. Sunspot number 138, the solar flux 197. I guess what's going to be important to examine this week is how active this group is going to be, and if it's going to flare again and maybe create more geomagnetic unrest. But the only way that you can witness all of this is to turn on a radio and listen.
I'm David Bachner of Guelph, Ontario, and I get my weekly radio news on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Next, we have a story from the Voice of America by Katherine Gypson. 2 U.S. radio stations end Russian-backed propaganda programming. Russian-backed radio programmer Sputnik no longer broadcasts in the Washington market after years of criticism that its local radio station, WZHF, carries anti-Semitic content and false information about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Political cartoonist Ted Rall, who described himself as a guest on Sputnik's programming, posted a comment Tuesday on X. Biden-Harris say they're fighting for democracy, yet today Sputnik News US is being forced to shut down due to Biden-Harris sanctions. My radio show and cartoons for them are being quashed. So are the other amazing shows. I go off the air with the station at noon. Manila Chan, a self-described indie journalist, tweeted Tuesday that she and Rall would be relaunching their show on YouTube following sanctions that have shut down RT Plus Sputnik. As first reported by The Desk, a news website on the business of streaming media, Sputnik stopped programming in its Washington-based market and 3 stations in Kansas City, Missouri area this week. Last month, the U.S. State Department introduced new sanctions on Russian-backed broadcasters, including television channel RT, for fundraising on behalf of the Russian military in opposition to Ukraine. The sanctions marked the first time the United States accused Russian broadcasters of providing direct and material military support. RT wants its new covert intelligence capabilities, like its long-standing propaganda disinformation efforts, to remain hidden. Our most powerful antidote to Russia's lies is the truth. It's shining a bright light on what the Kremlin is trying to do under the cover of darkness, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said last month. The sanctions did not specifically prohibit the content of the programming, but made it more difficult for Sputnik to continue buying airtime on U.S. stations. As Foreign Missions Act designated entities, Rossiya Segodina, RIA Novosti, RT, TV Novosti, Ruchtli, and Sputnik will be required to notify the State Department of all personnel working in the United States. The entities will also be required to disclose all real property they hold within the United States, said the State Department in a September 4th statement. RT and RT America, the TV and digital media company founded by Russian President Vladimir Putin in 2005, directs Sputnik. Prior to this week, 5 U.S. radio stations carried Russian government-backed Sputnik programming. So this has been a hot-button issue in the United States for quite a while. It sparked some rules that foreign ownership of media outlets in the United States would be prohibited. But what some of these Sputnik services were doing was just purchasing some of the airtime on existing radio stations, but not owning the stations. So this was their way to get around it. There were a few stations where they were on 24 hours a day, purchased from the owners of the station.
Sometimes it's difficult to make a difference. Is this local programming from a station, or is a foreign broadcaster sending me some propaganda? It's not always easy to see the difference.
No, it has to be a little more transparent to people, because people hear stuff and they don't really look into the background sometimes of, well, just who's saying these things and where is it coming from? And if it's coming from a domestic radio station, well, you kind of think, well, it must be from here, but really it isn't. It's brokered programming in effect.
In our next story, which is a little strange, Taliban planning to convert state television into radio stations. This is via Radio Info Asia. The Taliban is reportedly planning to convert state television stations into radio outlets following its ban on broadcasting images of living beings, according to a report by Afghanistan International. Sources said that staff from the National Television Network in Kabul and various provinces will likely be reassigned to work at the new radio stations aimed at promoting the group's policies and disseminating its religious views. Radio Bayan-e-Shomal will be renamed Radio Hurriyat, with its broadcast managed by Taliban's intelligence services. There will also be dedicated radio stations for the Ministry of Interior and the military. Taliban also intends to shut Afghanistan's national television and replace it with Radio Shariat, which Yusuf Hamadi, the head of national television under Taliban control, stated in a meeting with media managers that the decision to stop television broadcasts was made by the Taliban leadership. The Taliban had already halted national television transmission in Kandahar and Takhar. This move follows a recent statement by the Taliban's Ministry for Promotion of Virtue, which indicated that the group is gradually enforcing a law banning the broadcast of images of living beings. This is so bizarre. Broadcasting images of living beings is not correct, apparently.
What does it really mean? They're not permitting them to broadcast pictures of any living being, not just people, but animals and anything that they consider living. I just can't understand what laws or what religious principle is being violated by doing that. Well, there's going to be some strange things on the radio. We can tell you that.
Yeah.
And that's coming up this week because Halloween is coming.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? pirates.
Radio.
And usually lots of them. We already have lots of pirate stations broadcasting on the shortwave bands, but Halloween is a special day for pirates, and a special week, actually, because it won't only be on Halloween. We need you to be sure, if you want to hear pirates, you're going to have to start tuning around the bands this week. All the familiar pirate activity that takes place, 6,800 to 7,000 kilohertz, maybe some in the 4,000 megahertz, some in the 4 megahertz range. And who knows where else? They could really pop up anywhere. What you need to do, if you've never heard one before, or you just want to monitor what's going on, because a lot of people will be looking for them, and really the best place you can go is a website called hfunderground.com. And people post there immediately as soon as they hear a pirate station, sometimes with the name of the station, the frequency, the time, and a bit of the content. You can even get electronic QSLs, verification cards from some of these stations, because they, in turn, are monitoring the postings that go on to HF Underground. So I would start right away. Probably, this week, all throughout the week, but definitely Halloween Eve and Halloween itself will be very, very active with pirate stations.
Definitely. You'll hear howlings and wolves and all sorts of bizarre things going on.
Yeah, there'll be things on commercial radio too, though. I know some stations like to broadcast like things like War of the Worlds and scary stories and what have you. So yeah, there'll be a lot of things tied into Halloween, but listening for the pirates is always a lot of fun. So check out HF Underground, and that'll keep you up to date in just about real time as to what pirate stations are on the air.
And we have a couple of amateur radio contests.
We have the American Radio Relay League is organizing the annual Sweepstakes contest in CW. It's 2100 Zulu November 2nd to 0300 November the 4th. It's to support amateur self-training in radio communications, including improving amateur operating skills, conducting technical investigations, and intercommunicating with other amateurs. Stations in the United States and Canada, including the territories and possessions, exchange information with as many other U.S. and Canadian stations as possible. All the major HF bands, 160 through 10 meters, no work bands, and the mode is CW.
And there's the High Speed Club CW contest, 1400 Zulu to 1700 Zulu November 3rd, organized by the Radio Telegraphy High Speed Radio Club, Germany. Bands 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz. CW only, and a lot of them might be quite fast CW.
Yeah, I think so. We do want to remind you, you still have some time to participate or listen in on the CQ Worldwide contest that is going on this weekend. It'll be wrapping up later this evening. So lots of activity, stations from all over the world. So you still have some time to go and tune in on the HF bands and listen for some of those unique stations. It's going to be a busy weekend this weekend for sure.
Yep, and Chase Victor Echo 2 Zulu Zulu India.
That's right. You'll be active during that contest. So if you hear Gilles on the bands and you're a ham operator, give him a shout and get yourself a point.
So we're out of time.
Yeah, we thank you for tuning in. We are reachable by email, radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streamed and archived at ckut.ca. We invite you to join our Facebook group, International Radio Report. Our YouTube channel is out there for you at IRR on YouTube. You can listen to our current shows and other shows from the past. And finally, our X account at IRRCKUT. We invite you to follow us there. And please do follow us to our show next week here on CKUT, where there will be a time change next weekend.
Yes.
So you have to take that into consideration, that we will still be on at 10:30 Eastern, but that will now be 15:30 UTC rather than 14:30 UTC. So keep that in mind. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you then on the next edition of our International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Have a great week, everyone.